Welcome to another edition of X's and Omar. The Dolphins are having a schizophrenic season based on the first two games. The Dolphins got crushed this past week at the Bills, 29-10, and won their first game 33-20. I'm CBS 12 Sports Director Matt Lincoln. He's the Sun Sentinel columnist for the Dolphins, Omar Kelly. Wow, what a start to this interesting season. We're hopefully going to break down these two games and try to figure out who the 2014 Dolphins really are. And of course, we'll take your questions from our live chat and on Twitter. Tweet your questions to us by using the hashtag XOMAR, and we'll do our best to make sure you are part of the show. So an embarrassing showing. Really, it's hard to imagine this Dolphins team looking better in week one and looking worse in week two.
I think it's a polar look of who this team is in terms of they are built to beat the New England Patriots. And I think Philip Wheeler sort of put it best. Interestingly enough, Philip Wheeler is really the truth serum of that game that they played against Buffalo. The Buffalo Bills are built to beat the Dolphins in terms of the Dolphins really struggle with teams that are more physical than them. If you're physical with them at the line of scrimmage and you beat them from a defensive standpoint by just rushing four, which is what Buffalo did consistently, getting pressure rushing four, dropping the rest of your defenders back into coverage, it gives Ryan Tannehill problems. If Tannehill's strength is picking up a blitzer, figuring out what's going on from a defensive standpoint and executing the offense when he's accurate. The Bills don't have to blitz in order to get pressure. They get pressure with the front four, and the Dolphins consistently allowed the pocket to collapse on Ryan Tannehill. That gave them troubles. And then also, when you can run the ball and keep the team off balance and keep them from pinning their ears back and rushing the quarterback, Cameron Wake was neutralized. He is the Dolphins' top player. That was an issue for the Dolphins, and really, they've got to get better in terms of fortifying their play at the line of scrimmage, being able to stop the run. And yes, I know they only allowed a 47-yard run that made the numbers for Buffalo look respectable. But they've got to be consistent at stopping the run and then running the ball effectively.
So that's what we can boil this down to: is that the difference between these two games is the physicality of the Patriots against the physicality of the Bills.
I think it comes down to the line of scrimmage, the trench play, and we talked about this in week one. We said that the Dolphins were more physical than the New England Patriots in week one. And then we flipped the script week two, and we're looking at the Bills are more physical than the Dolphins, own the line of scrimmage from a running standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, and it became a convincing victory. Now, with that being said, there were other issues against Buffalo. Special teams, tremendous nightmare of a performance. You basically gave them a touchdown on the kickoff return. Then you put them into scoring territory twice with a blocked punt and then a muffed punt. You had two squib kicks. You had poor special teams coverage. That can't exist. The Dolphins are not good enough team to give you yardage and points on special teams, then play okay on offense, then play okay on defense. They've got to get better at that unit, and that to me is the easiest thing to fix right now moving forward.
Well, one of the toughest things that's going to be able to try to be fixed is the running game. Of course, the important player, Noshawn Moreno, dislocated his elbow on the very first series of the game, his first carry. Moreno is expected to miss the next 4 weeks. When you add to it that Lamar Miller sprained his ankle, give us an update on those injuries and how the Dolphins have addressed them this week.
Lamar Miller actually practiced yesterday, and he's probably going to continue to practice. He didn't look as bad as most people expected. He left the game in a walking boot. The ankle injury is not as severe as Cole Meese's ankle injury. I expect him to play on Sunday, if not start. Then you've got Damian Williams, who is the young back from Oklahoma, who actually had a respectable game, 5 carries for 19 yards, but then, good blocks. Now, I say respectable game on offense, but he was a problem on special teams. But Damian Williams is going to be that second back. He's going to get the opportunity to handle that third down workload, which used to belong to Daniel Thomas and Noshawn Moreno.
Right.
Well, now that job could possibly go to Daniel Thomas as well, because the Dolphins have re-signed him, brought him back into the fold, primarily because Daniel Thomas already knows this offense. Right. He's already proven that he's an adequate blocker, and that's what you need right now with Noshawn Moreno down. An adequate blocker and an adequate pass catcher. As you know with Lamar Miller, he's had a couple of drops in the last 2 weeks, and he's got to show that he can actually block and pass catches in order to be on the field on third downs.
As reported, Michael James came to town. That's a guy, if you watched Oregon, you get really excited about. Oh, he's fast, he's explosive. But listen, he can't come in and handle this laser offense, even if Thomas might not be as exciting of a player.
Thomas is not as exciting as a player, but Lamarcus James does the same things that Lamar Miller does, probably not as well as he does them. And he's also a liability from a blocking standpoint. And we really don't know if he can be a pass catcher. So you got Daniel Thomas because he is a safe pick. He can help you get through the injury issues that you're having with Noshawn Moreno.
All right, well, let's take our first question. It comes from @MarkHands1. What will affect this Dolphins team more, the loss of the linebackers or the loss of the running backs?
I think it's, especially moving forward into this week, I think it's the loss of the linebackers. They've got to get Koomisi back. He has not practiced with the team. He's still battling his ankle injury. He's no longer walking in a boot. He's walking regular, walking fine, but he's not practicing with the team. He's working with the trainers. If he doesn't practice today, I think the odds of him playing on Sunday against Kansas City are slim. However, I will say this about Koomisi. He is a hard worker. He's very consistent. He wants to be on the field, and he wants to show people the progress that he's made as the inside linebacker. And in my opinion, they're going to need him this week from the standpoint Kansas City has two good tight ends, one the Dolphins are familiar with in Anthony Fasano, and then Travis Kelce, a second-year player who's really tearing it up over there in Kansas City. And I think that he's going to be the hardest player for the Dolphins to really match up with from an offensive standpoint. But Kansas City's probably going to play the Dolphins in a two tight end set a lot, and the Dolphins better have two linebackers that can actually cover them.
And they like to dump it off to the running backs, too. So that's
and they've got an issue with Jamal Charles is probably not going to play this game because of a high ankle sprain, one of the worst injuries a running back can have. But for people who say, oh, man, Jamal Charles is gone, you know, we got a chance, I say do your homework and look up Niles Davis. I think he's a very talented player, 23 attempts, 82 yards, 2 touchdowns last week, 7 receptions for 29 yards. I think he can be – I don't do fantasy.
Right.
I don't do fantasy. But I think he's a back that's going to put up big numbers.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who can break it open just like Jamal Charles can. Well, the Dolphins got owned by Buffalo's defensive line, which produced 4 sacks. Dallas Thomas might have to start the game because of a knee injury to Shelley Smith.
Dolphins have been down this road before.
Not that Shelley Smith played great last week.
No, he got owned by Kyle Williams.
Right. Has Miami's O-line problems been fixed, or does the unit still have major issues?
I would say they have major issues.
Okay.
And Mike Pouncey practiced yesterday, so he's on the road back to recovery. However, the odds of him, and he thinks he's able to play, the odds of them clearing him to play are very slim. He's got to consistently practice and show you that he's got no lingering effects of the hip issue, and then he's got to get back in football form. But with Shelley Smith sidelined for probably a couple of weeks, it looks like Dallas Thomas is going to get that start unless Nate Garner unseats him. We will find out quickly whether or not Dallas Thomas can be an effective starting offensive guard in the NFL. I think he played pretty okay against Dallas, against Buffalo. He was decent against Buffalo, which I can't say the same thing for Shelley Smith. The question is, can he progress and get better moving forward? And I'm not sure about that.
I don't have the numbers, but is Kyle Williams actually bigger than Shelley Smith? Because I mean, Shelley Smith is not the biggest offensive lineman.
Kyle Williams is a Pro Bowl. Shelley Smith is not big,
right?
But he is a Pro Bowl pocket collapsing defensive tackle in the company of Randy Starks, and it's hard to block him one-on-one. Shelley Smith had a very difficult matchup, and he lost a lot. That's the reality of it.
When Pouncey comes back, will Satele still start? Will he move over to guard and maybe start, or what will happen there?
I think I really think the possibility of playing Samson Satele at guard is very slim. Now, obviously, when you're desperate, you do desperate things. And we don't know if Dallas Thomas can play. He's going to have certainly a good matchup against former University of Miami defensive lineman Alan Bailey. So it's going to be an interesting situation to see how he performs. It's not like he's performing against a Pro Bowler, like, you know, the last time he was exposed. This is really a situation where he can prove that he is an NFL caliber player, if not an NFL starter. When you have those opportunities to rise to the occasion and play well, like a Jelani Jenkins did last week.
Yeah, he did. He played well.
You got to step up and you got to deliver. That's what you're in the NFL for. People got to understand, there are 53 players on an NFL roster. 53, not even counting the 10 on the practice squad. If you cannot play, you shouldn't be on a 53-man roster.
Right.
And that's just a reality situation because you're only as good from a team standpoint as your weakest link. And right now, last week, the weakest link was the linebacker unit. This week, the weakest link, still the linebacker unit, but might also be that right guard spot.
Well, and you talked about, you tweeted out before the game, Jason Trusnick getting all those stars, getting all those snaps at linebacker. You're taking him off the special teams. I'm worried about the special teams today.
It was compromised.
Totally right.
You know, the funny thing is, I was watching the kickoff to C.J. Spiller, and I said to my partner, Chris Perkins, who was sitting as far as you are to me, and I said, if they don't kick this out of bounds, this is going to be trouble.
Right.
And immediately after I saw the kick, I said, he's housing it. And right there, you saw a lane, Kelvin Shepard, who replaced Jason Trusnick, gets washed away by Brandon Spikes, and the lane pops open. You know, Seamster gets Metro Rail to the sidelines, and it's gone to the house. And you really have to play better on special teams, and it comes down to the young players. I was talking to Michael Thomas, who made his way into the NFL as a special teams player, and even though he's started right now for Dolphins at safety, you know, you got to show that you belong in the NFL. The first part is the special teams, and young guys like Gator Haskins and Damian Williams and New Orleans Darkwa and even Jamar Taylor and Will Davis, they've got to get better as special teams player in order to earn their keep.
Brandon Fields can put a kickoff through the end zone every single time.
You mean Caleb Sturgis?
Well, no. In the Patriots game, they switched Fields and Sturgis taking kickoffs, and Fields was putting it through the back of the end zone, and Sturgis can't get it through the back of the end zone. So why was Sturgis taking kickoffs?
It's his job.
Okay.
They might, you know, hey, they might be exploring it. Here's the thing about the Caleb Sturgis situation.
Right.
We knew going into the New Orleans game, he had a groin injury.
Right.
He did well. Not New Orleans, New England. He did well against New England. They probably put a little bit more on his plate. Obviously, with those kickoffs, he wasn't ready for it.
Right.
And situation has to be explored moving forward. And I know I'm confident that Darren Rizzi's going to find the solution and find the fixes that will get this problem solved.
I mean, some guys you say, okay, we'll kick it to you, 5 yards deep in the end zone and see if you take it back, and we'll tackle you at the 13. C.J. Spiller's not that guy. You just don't want
you don't want to kick it off to him.
You talked a little bit about Misi's injury. What is the update there, and when should we expect him back?
I expect Cole Misi to practice at some point either today or tomorrow. I do expect him to play, considering he's walking around, he's not getting treatment right after practice. It's a situation where they need Cole Misi back. He is the glue, the guy that holds everything together. He is the defensive caller. And as well as Jason Trusnick has played, he's been adequate. He's played okay. With Jelani Jenkins' promise and upside, and he does have some upside, 20 tackles in 2 games, that shows you that he's got some upside. If you have a guy on in the middle who's reading things, diagnosing things, puts him in a better position to make plays, I think you'll have a better defense.
Right. The coaching staff obviously doesn't think Chris McCain's ready to handle those linebackers.
No, Chris McCain was sick last week, and really when you got a young player like a rookie, as talented as he is,
right,
if you don't practice all week and you aren't preparing to be put in these situations and you're not 100% healthy, it's not very safe to put you on the field.
Right. Well, we've got some breaking news this morning. Deion Jordan and Rashad Jones are not coming back early from their suspensions under the new drug policy between the NFL and the Players Union. Omar, explain this to us. Why are there guys who are able to play immediately, and why are these guys not?
It comes down to the guys who can return come down to the rule changes in terms of amphetamine testing. If you tested positive for amphetamine use in the offseason, and this is your first violation of the NFL's, first violation of the drug policy ever, then you fall into a category like a Wes Welker, Wes Welker, who is allowed to come back to his team, who is allowed to return. And unfortunately for Dolphin fans, either Deion Jordan and Rashad Jones did not take amphetamines and they took other stimulants, or this is not their first violation of the drug policy test. Drug policy test. This is not the first time their peas turned up dirty.
Right.
And it's going to cost them the same 4 games that they were initially expected to miss.
Is that big news for? I mean, how much do the Dolphins need Rashad Jones and Deion Jordan right now?
You know what? From a special team standpoint, I felt like they needed those players back. Not that Rashad Jones is great at special teams or can help you. Deion Jordan's definitely good at special teams, and he could definitely help you. But getting Rashad Jones back would alleviate some of the snaps that Jimmy Wilson was taking, so that maybe Jimmy Wilson can go back and play special teams. They have got a gunner issue. And, for people who don't understand what gunner is, that's the speed speed-specific positions, the cornerbacks, the safeties, the running backs, the receivers, the Marlon Moores of the team. They have, the Don Jones of the team. And as you see, if you're a Patriots fan, Don Jones is killing it out there as a gunner for New England. You need a better speed player to track down the C.J. Spillers of the world, or a better gunner to go down and field a punt in terms of beating his two flyers and getting in front of the punt guy. And I don't see one on the roster. It's not Will Davis, it's not Jamar Taylor, right now it's not Jarvis Landry, it's not Rashard Matthews. They got to get better at that position. And Jimmy Wilson has been a very good gunner during his NFL career. Unfortunately, right now he's a starter. When you have Jason Trusnick back on special teams, then it maybe alleviates the need for Deion Jordan. The linebackers play a predominant role on special teams, especially in the coverage unit. He's not coming back.
Right.
You got to make do with what you have. Kelvin Shepard's going to have to continue to play.
Right. Well, I'm throwing plenty of questions at you. Let's take more of your questions. Let's take one from Ema Ender. Maybe? Ema Ender? I don't know. That's what we're going to go with that. What did the Bills do to neutralize the pass rush, and is this something that can be copied by other teams?
It was the style of offense. If you listen to Kevin Coyle, the Dolphins' defensive coordinator, it was the style of offense that the Bills ran. The fact that the Bills consistently got them into good third down situations, 3rd and 6 or shorter, that allowed them to open up their quick passing game, 3-step drops, get the ball out. They also helped with aligning tight end up on Cameron Wake's side. They also helped with chipping Cameron Wake with a back. There was a lot of attention paid to Cameron Wake. However, he did have opportunities to make a play and didn't. And the same thing happens with the rest of the defensive line. While some players have been playing well, like Earl Mitchell, and I thought Randy Starks played well for being injured. Guys like Olivier Vernon, have to do better at beating their one-on-one assignments. And I thought OV had a better game, but I think he's a Pro Bowl talent and can play better than he has. They have to either stop the run better,
right,
and that will ultimately help them get into 3rd and 7s and longers. And that's just a situation. This team has to have a lead, and they have to be able to run the ball, and they have to be able to put pressure on the quarterback. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do either of those three against the Bills.
Despite giving up 22 points, we'll take away the C.J. Spiller special teams touchdown. The defense probably played well enough to win the game. But there's no debate on the offense not playing well enough to win anything. Ryan Tannehill struggled. He struggled for 2 straight games. Tannehill has a passer rating of 76.1, which hints he's more of a bottom-tier quarterback, really.
He's in the Chad Henne realm.
No, he's way down there.
In fact, Chad Henne has a better quarterback rating, but let's not go there.
How bad is this, and are there reasons to expect it to get better?
It's been pretty bad in terms of what the expectations were for him in his 3rd year taking that jump. But you got to understand, he's in a new offense. In the second game, his running game was not really there. I mean, I know they still got a 271 rushing yards, but a lot of that came in the second half when they were second quarter when they were trying to run down the clock, and then late in the game. Ryan Tannehill's problems are accuracy. Despite his 60.5% completion rate, he's off the mark on a lot of his passes. And in this offense, you got to understand, you throw to spots. You don't throw to open receivers, which is different than the offense that Ryan Tannehill is used to and familiar with. Now, certainly some of his weapons have dropped some catchable balls. I think he's got 7 drops. Lamar Miller's got a huge bulk of those. Mike Wallace has got a couple. Brian Hartline's got 2. Charles Clay's got a couple. Yes, those are important. But I say this, every quarterback has his weapons drop passes for him.
Right.
For you, I think Bill Lazor put it best. The good quarterbacks in the NFL are accurate. The are really accurate. The okay quarterbacks are kind of accurate.
Right.
And then the ones that you forget about, they struggle with accuracy. Right now, I would put Ryan Tannehill in the category of the guys that you forget about. Just because if you have those instances to deliver big plays, and for whatever reason they don't come through, for whatever either pass interference or the ball's off the mark or the receiver drops the ball or you put the ball a little bit behind him and allow the defensive back to catch up, for whatever reason, you're going to get 4 to 5 opportunities to deliver big plays that can change the course of the game. And if your quarterback, offense, receivers, whoever it is, do not deliver in those instances, you are going to be in trouble. because you're relying too heavily on special teams, defense, and coaching to win you the game.
Right.
And you got to take advantage of those opportunities.
And so much of those things have to go right. The protection has to be there.
And you got to hope for the opponent to make mistakes and turn over the ball. Yeah. Too many things have to go right for you not play a respectable game offensively and still win.
Right. But for Tannehill then not to throw a good ball and everything else to go right. That's what makes it so much more of a struggle. Let's take the next question from Terry O'Shawn. He wants to know how many games into the season we realistically can write off Tannehill. I'm going to switch that question a little bit. How bad does he have to play to not be the starting quarterback of the Dolphins this year?
I think if you reach game 8 and you're still looking at a quarterback who's under an 80 passer rating, who's still struggling with accuracy issues, who's not making things happen, and if Joe Philbin eventually gets to the point where he's midway through the season and he doesn't have a chance to get to 9 victories, then I think you pull the plug and you try the Matt Moore experiment. And as I have always said, Matt Moore can win you games in the NFL. I don't know if he can make you a playoff quarterback, but he's a good, competent starting quarterback. And I think midseason is when you reevaluate the situation.
So if this team is 4-4, 3-5,
4-4, he's good.
4-4, he's good. But 3-5, or
I think 3-5, he might be able to survive. I think once you get to 10 wins and you 6 games left in the season and you got to win 5 to get to 9 victories.
You're throwing stuff up against the wall to
absolutely.
make things work, right? Okay, let's take our next question from Coach Shula Says. It's probably not the real Coach Shula, I'm assuming. What happened to the fast-paced scheme the Finns are supposed to use? Up-tempo has to come soon, right? Coach Laser took responsibility for the poor offense. Is it supposed to look any different than what we're seeing?
You know what? I've watched them practice consistently, and I've always heard about this up-tempo push. And I've never seen it. Yeah, okay. I watched the exhibition season. I heard them say, up-tempo, we're going to push the pace. Never seen it. I've been here and covered this team during the whole Joe Philbin era from his first season here with the team in 2012. He said, well, we're going to be up-tempo. We're going to push the pace. Never seen it. I think the push the pace, up-tempo Miami Dolphins is fictional.
Okay.
And I don't think it exists.
So, all right. Well, I guess it's. But it should be better. You know, the one thing that Coach Laser said this week was, this is a team that is dead last in pass yards per attempt.
5.2.
This is the absolute opposite of what I'm trying to do. How much blame does he deserve?
I don't think he deserves that much blame from the standpoint it's execution. Execution is the problem. What he called the play, Shelley Smith got owned at the line of scrimmage, compromised the pocket for Tannehill, led to a sack, compromised the pocket for the run game. How much is that Bill Lazor's fault?
Right.
Lamar Miller drops a pass, Charles Clay drops a pass, Ryan Tannehill can't deliver on a deep ball that they've probably set up all game. How much is that Bill Lazor's fault?
Right.
I have a hard time sitting there, but I was that way with Dan Henning. I was that way with Brian Daboll. I was that way with, Mike Sherman. I will call you out if play calling, I think, or your creativity or you're not favoring matchups. I'm not going to call you out if execution is the issue.
All right, let's move ahead and talk a little bit about this week's opponent, the Kansas City Chiefs. Dolphins need some fixing, and so do the Chiefs. We talked about Jamal Charles. He's going to be out. The Chiefs were a team that really took the NFL by storm last year, through the first half anyway.
They had what I call a 2008 Miami Dolphins season, where they, got a little luck with the scheduling, got a little luck with the turnover margin, found a consistent quarterback working in a new offense, took the lead by surprise. And now they're coming back to the pack.
Exposed. Yeah. I
wouldn't say exposed. They're just coming back to the pack a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, that defense that was so good last year, maybe not as good anymore.
No, I don't see it.
So, you talk about this team. What do you see that's dangerous? How can the Chiefs beat the Dolphins?
I think it comes down to the play of Alex Smith. I think he's a better quarterback than he's shown so far. He's got a 63.8 passer rating. I watched him against Denver, and I really didn't think he played as bad as his numbers indicate. A lot of the times he was trying to speed things up or throw more daring passes just because of the deficit that they were playing. But realistically, the Chiefs are 30th ranked now in points, 13.5 points a game. I think the Dolphins can handle that. Yeah, I think they can be able to score 14 points. But as I said early in the show, two key players from an offensive standpoint that I think are an issue is Niles Davis, who I think is very talented. Not as talented as Jamal Charles, but is very talented. And then Travis Kelce, the tight end, the second tight end. I think he's going to create favorable matchups for the Chiefs. But then on the flip side, Chiefs linebackers have some injury issues. Eric Berry's status for the game, their Pro Bowl safety, unknown. And then their cornerback play. Even though Sean Smith is back there and is possibly vying for a starting spot or going to have a lot of playing opportunity, I believe he's allowed 10 of 12 passes to be completed on him and 2 touchdowns. And Sean is, if I were the Dolphins, I know him, I would attack him. He's not a physical player, and if you put him in a favorable matchup with maybe Mike Wallace, and let's assume that Sean Smith has lost a step, you might be able to exploit that.
You're talking about matchups. Your biggest matchup of this week's game is a former Chief, Brandon Albert, going up against Tamba Hali, the big defensive lineman for the Chiefs. You know,
I think the Chiefs move him around a little bit to create favorable matchups, and if I were the Chiefs, I would probably put him up against Juwan James to continue to give the rookie a test. However, I got to say this about Juwan. He played very well against Mario Williams. Mario Williams did manage to get a sack, but a lot of that was because Kyle Williams collapsed the pocket on Shelley Smith, and you know, Ryan Tannehill basically stepped into a sack. But Juwan James is still a young rookie. He's still unproven, but this is going to be an important game for Brandon Albert, his homecoming, or actually playing against the team that he once played against, and he's got to show them that he's stepping up.
All right. Let's take some of your rapid-fire questions. Let's do these as fast as we can.
Okay.
76 Dolphin needs to know, what is going on with Clay and Hartline? Where are they?
I don't think Clay is healthy. He's still battling a right knee injury issue, and I think it's going to take him some time to get his speed back. He's productive, but he's not Charles Clay. He's not the 87th best player in the NFL. And then Brian Hartline, I think they're favoring Mike Wallace a little bit too much. Dolphin fans wanted Bill Lazor to get Mike Wallace involved, be active with Mike Wallace. Well, you got your wish. Now,
as the other guys,
the player I call Blanky, he's being ignored.
Right. Let's at JDG Dread 1050 asks, how was Sammy Watkins open on every play against the Bills? And maybe we should say, how was Sammy Watkins open on every play that Will Davis was covering him against the Bills?
That is your answer. Will Davis was targeted. He was picked on, picks. In a zone, they released Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins ran some very easy drag routes across the middle of the field. It was an easy find for E.J. Manuel, especially when the Dolphins were playing zone. I think primary problem that the Dolphins faced against the Bills, the thing that I think the Bills did expose, is that when they're in the red zone, the Dolphins play a little bit too much zone.
And Will Davis had his hands on what would have been a huge interception at one point, and you ask yourself, that's the one thing that you're supposed to be good at, Will, is getting your hands on the ball and doing something with it.
The Dolphins do not have an interception in the exhibition season or the 2 games that they played. That is going to continue to be a problem if they continue to progress. But I will say this. From opposing quarterbacks are only completing less than 55% of their passes. They have a 78.9 passer rating. That to me is usually a good indicator of how they're playing. Now, have they given up too many touchdowns from the passing game? I would say yes.
Okay. Let's take some more of your quick questions. Actually, I have one for you.
All right.
I think it would be hard not to find a rookie punt returner who went his entire first season of punt returning without muffing one. Okay? And that's Jarvis Landry's one, right? How many more opportunities does he get?
I wasn't comfortable with him taking over the punt return duties. I'm still not comfortable with him taking over the punt return duties. It's different when you've seen a guy do it in college and you could say it translates. There's a reason why when Devon Best was here, they called it the back-end territory. Marcus Thigpen was the primary punt returner. However, in the back-end area where you needed sure hands, Devon Best took over. And I think the Dolphins need a sure hands guy just so that to take a little bit of the pressure off Jarvis Landry.
All right. Well, more of your questions. At John P. asks, can Daniel Thomas be effective this week? Do you see him getting carries this week?
I think they're going to give Damian Williams and Orleans Darkwa, the 2 undrafted rookies, more opportunities to get going. I think they're going to give them the opportunity because they either represent the future or you need to move on.
So you're talking about fantasy. Don't pick up Daniel Thomas this week. All right. We are off to an awful start this season picking games. We're 0-2. We've been wrong both times, but I think a lot of people also have been wrong about the Dolphins so far.
Not my partner, Chris Perkins. He's perfect so
he
far.
Really?
2-0.
Well, you're supposed to be the expert. Why have we been so wrong?
I didn't expect them to get owned at the line of scrimmage against Buffalo. I obviously picking the Patriots. Who doesn't pick the Patriots in that matchup other than Chris Perkins? Now, the Bills game, it just led to some matchups that Dolphins were not able to exploit. I really do believe that they're going to do a better job against Kansas City. I think Kansas City is a well-coached team. They've got some very key injuries from the linebacker unit, from the running back unit, from the safety unit, and really their offense isn't greased up and playing well right now. I do think that the Dolphins are going to be able to pull out a 20-17 victory. I think maybe that monkey of the South Florida heat and humidity jumps on Kansas City's back, and if the Dolphins are able to find a running game, I think they should win 20-17.
Okay, you tweeted that you compare the units to both teams, and the only advantages the Chiefs had were at QB and at running back, and really those advantages aren't that
large.
Coaching
too. I forgot to throw in coaching.
And that's as easy as it comes down to. The defense is considerably better, and it's a home game for the Dolphins.
Defense is considerably better. I like the Dolphins' wide receivers, and I think that they should be able to make plays on Kansas City's depleted and weak secondary.
All right. Well, we should have a better idea of what this Dolphins what this team is going to look like. I got to give my prediction.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did not talk about this before. I'm also taking the Dolphins, and I'm taking them 20-16.
Okay, 20-16. Interesting score. All right.
All right. That is it for our show. If you get a chance, take an opportunity to watch this week's 1st and 10 interviews with Dolphins rookie safety Walt Aikens and defensive tackle Anthony Johnson. Thanks for joining us this week. And again, you can find X's and Omar here live at 12:15 p.m. every Wednesday and replaying on the Sun Sentinel sports pages throughout the week.